My name is Elaine Mercer. I am 58 years old. On Monday morning, the 11th of May, 2026, at 8:10 a.m., two police officers and a woman from Adult Protective Services stood in my living room with a file that said I had stolen $142,600 from my own elderly parents. I remember the sound before I remember the faces. 3 hard knocks on my front door, while my coffee was still dripping in the kitchen. My house in Des Moines was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that makes every small thing louder, the refrigerator humming, the wall clock ticking 3 minutes slow, the spoon I had left beside the sink. When I opened the door, Detective Kline held up her badge. Behind her stood a younger officer, one hand resting near his belt, and a woman with a clipboard pressed against her chest. And behind all of them, near the porch railing, was my younger sister, Corinne Mercer Dawson, wearing a pale blue cardigan and crying like she had practiced in a mirror. "She is not well," Corinne said before anyone asked her anything. "She has not been well for 20 years. Detective Kline looked at me carefully, the way people look at someone they have already been warned about. Then my mother's voice came through the detective's phone on speaker. Gloria Mercer, 80 years old, still able to sound gentle while handing someone a knife. "Elaine has always been unstable," she said. "She imagines things. She twists things. We have tried to help her." My father was on the line too. Russell Mercer, 82. He said only one sentence. "Do what you need to do." I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. At 58, I had learned that a woman called unstable only proves their point when she begs to be believed. I looked at Detective Kline and said, "Before I go anywhere, may I take one folder from my filing cabinet?" Corinne stopped crying. That was when I knew she understood. Before we get into the story, please subscribe to support the channel. I guess you're feeling a little tired today, right? If so, type 1. If you're fine today, type 2. Either way, I hope this story will make you feel better. Now, let's begin. To understand why Detective Kline looked at me the way she did, you have to understand the house where my name was first made smaller. I grew up in Ankeny, Iowa, in a beige split level with aluminum siding, a narrow front porch, and a maple tree that dropped red leaves into the gutters every October. My mother used to say it was a good house because it stayed presentable. That was how Gloria Mercer judged most things, by how well they behaved when company came over. The hallway inside our front door was lined with photographs, but they were not really family photographs. They were Corinne photographs. Corinne at 6, missing both front teeth, holding a construction paper angel from Sunday school. Corinne at 12, standing beside a piano she never practiced. Corinne in a white graduation robe. Corinne beside my parents at First Lutheran, holding a brass plaque that said Senior Outreach Volunteer Award, smiling like kindness was something she had invented. There was one photograph of me. I was 34, standing at the far end of a restaurant table during my parents' 40th anniversary dinner, wearing a green dress I had bought on clearance from Yonkers. I had not wanted to be in the picture. My mother had waved me over at the last second because someone from church was holding the camera, and leaving one daughter out would have looked strange. In the frame, I was half turned, one hand still resting on the back of an empty chair, as if even the photograph had caught me trying to decide whether I belonged there. My mother had a gift for assigning words to people until the words became rooms you were expected to live in. Corinne was thoughtful. Corinne was tender-hearted. Corinne was naturally giving. If she forgot to call, she was overwhelmed. If she cried, she cared too much. If she changed her story, she was protecting her peace. I was tense. I was sharp. I was too particular. If I remembered a detail, I was keeping score. If I asked a question twice, I was interrogating people. If I noticed something wrong, I was looking for trouble. By the time I was 40, they no longer needed a full sentence. One word did the work. Unstable. My father, Russell, rarely corrected anyone. He had been an insurance adjuster for 38 years, a man trained to study damage and decide what it was worth. At home, he treated conflict like weather unpleasant, inconvenient, and best waited out from a chair near the window. When my mother spoke over me, he looked at his plate. When Corinne cried, he passed her a napkin. When I tried to explain, he said, "Elaine, don't upset your mother." For years, I thought his silence meant he did not want to choose. Later, I understood. In my family, silence was not empty. Silence was a signature. The first signature I ever stopped trusting belonged to my father. It was October of 2006, 16 days after my divorce became final. I was 38 years old, sleeping in the guest room of a rented duplex on the south side of Des Moines, with most of my life still packed in cardboard boxes, labeled in black marker. People kept telling me I was fragile. Corinne said it first, softly, with one hand resting on my mother's shoulder. Then, my mother repeated it to my aunt, to a woman from church, to anyone who asked why I had come back to Iowa thinner than when I left. That month, my father went in for a heart procedure at Mercy Medical Center in Des Moines. It was not open-heart surgery, they said, but it was serious enough to make everyone speak softly and move carefully around him. My mother wanted us all there, because Gloria Mercer believed hospital waiting rooms were places where good families proved themselves. Corinne arrived with a tote bag full of magazines, bottled water, and a fleece blanket she had bought the night before at Target. I arrived with my father's medication list, his insurance card, and 3 pages of questions he had asked me to write down because he did not like talking to doctors. Before they took him back, a nurse came in with a clipboard and asked about medical power of attorney. My mother said, "We already handled that," and pulled a folded document from her purse. I was standing close enough to see the bottom of the page when the nurse smoothed it flat on the counter. The name listed was Corinne's. That part hurt, but it did not surprise me. What stopped me was the signature. My father's R always dipped below the line, a long hook at the end, like he was anchoring the rest of his name to the paper. I had seen it on birthday cards, insurance forms, church checks, and every school permission slip he had ever signed for me. The R on that document sat stiff and high, like someone copying a shape without knowing the habit behind it. The date had been pressed over twice. The last 6 in 2006 was darker than the rest. I said, quietly, "Dad didn't sign this." My mother turned toward me so slowly that even the nurse looked down at her clipboard. "Elaine," she said, "not today." Corinne stood near the vending machine, holding a paper cup of coffee with both hands. She looked wounded before anyone had accused her of anything. "You're scaring Mom," she said. I tried once more. "Look at the R." My mother's face changed then. Not anger, something worse. Disappointment dressed as concern. "This is why we can't trust you in important moments," she said. I stopped talking. After my father was wheeled away, I asked the nurse if I could have a copy of the document for my own family records before it went into the hospital file. My mother gave a tired little sigh, the kind meant to make other people feel sorry for her, but she did not stop it. The clerk made a photocopy and stamped the date in blue ink on the corner. That copy became the first page of the folder. The second document in the folder came from a woman my mother had chosen because she thought a professional would finally give her the sentence she wanted. 2 weeks after my father came home from the hospital, Gloria told me she had made an appointment with a family therapist named Hannah Reeves. She said it gently, over the phone, while I was standing in the laundry room of my duplex folding towels that still smelled faintly like cardboard from the moving boxes. "I think it would help you process everything," she said. Everything meant my divorce. Everything meant the hospital. Everything meant the fact that I had looked at a signature and said the wrong thing out loud. Hannah Reeves had an office on the second floor of a brick building near Ingersoll Avenue, above a tax preparer and across from a bakery that smelled like cinnamon by 9 in the morning. The stairs creaked in the middle. The waiting room had a fake fern, 3 outdated magazines, and a little machine that made rain sounds too softly to cover the traffic outside. I expected Hannah to ask why I was angry. Most people did. Instead, she sat across from me in a navy sweater, legal pad balanced on her knee, and asked, Who gets to decide what happened in your family? I remember looking at her for a long time. No one had ever asked me that before. For 2 sessions, I told her about the way facts changed shape once my mother repeated them. How Elaine noticed the signature was wrong became Elaine ruined the hospital day. How Corinne could cry before she was accused and somehow become the injured party first. How my father's silence always arrived just in time to make my mother's version official. Hannah did not interrupt much. She wrote slowly. Once, she looked up and said, "You are very careful with details." I waited for the insult that usually came after that. It did not come. At the end of the second session, Hannah asked whether I would be comfortable letting my parents join us for 10 minutes. I said yes, because some small, foolish part of me still believed that if a professional said the truth gently enough, my parents might finally hear it. I sat in the hallway while they spoke inside. The rain machine kept whispering behind the closed door. I could not hear everything, but I heard one sentence clearly. Elaine is not the source of the instability. She may be the person reacting to it. When my mother came out, her face was smooth in that church lobby way of hers. My father would not meet my eyes. On the drive home, Gloria said, "Hannah thinks you are still under stress from the divorce." That night, I emailed Hannah and asked for a brief session summary for my personal records. She sent 3 careful paragraphs. I printed them at the public library the next morning, paid 12 cents for the page, and slid it behind the hospital copy. By then, the folder was no longer empty. It was listening. For a long time, the folder grew quietly, 1 page at a time, while Corinne grew louder in public. After my father's procedure, my parents needed more help than they wanted to admit. Someone had to refill prescriptions, call the insurance company when a claim was denied, sit on hold with Medicare and the supplemental plan, drive my mother to her eye appointments, and remind my father that blood pressure medicine did not work if it stayed in the orange bottle on the kitchen counter. Most of that was me. I did not do it beautifully. I did it during lunch breaks, after work, in grocery store parking lots with a pen between my teeth and a stack of forms on the passenger seat. Corinne did something different. She arrived when people were watching. She came on Easter with a casserole wrapped in foil and let my mother tell 3 women from church that Corinne had been such a blessing lately. She showed up on Mother's Day, with tulips, and a card big enough to stand on the mantel. She posted photographs from waiting rooms, her hand resting on my mother's shoulder. Her captions always soft and polished. Caring for aging parents is sacred work. Give grace. Choose patience. Honor the season. I was usually the person who had made the appointment. In 2014, at my mother's 70th birthday dinner, Corinne stood at the head of the table at the machine shed in Urbandale and raised a glass of white wine. There were cousins, church friends, 2 neighbors, and my father sitting beside my mother with his hearing aid turned low, though not low enough to miss what came next. "Mom taught me that family means patience," Corinne said, "even when someone makes it difficult." No one asked who someone was. They did not have to. I felt the sentence move around the table and settle on me like dust. I kept my hands folded in my lap and looked down at the little paper sleeve around my silverware. My father reached for his water glass. He did not correct her. He did not look at me. Across the table, my cousin Grace Bellamy watched Corinne, then looked at me. She said nothing there. People rarely did. But later that night, after I got home, my phone buzzed. I saw what she did. I should have said something. I saved the message. Not because it proved a crime. It proved something smaller and harder to survive. Someone else had seen the shape of it. 4 years later, when my mother slipped in the garage and cut her arm on the edge of a metal shelf, I was the one who got there first. I wrapped the cut in a dish towel, drove her to urgent care, answered the nurse's questions, and sat beside her until the bleeding stopped. Corinne arrived 46 minutes later with mascara on and her phone already in her hand. That evening, she posted a video about dropping everything for family. I was standing 3 feet away when she filmed it. I was not in the frame. That became the pattern. Corinne kept the pictures. I kept the paper. I did not save everything, and that matters. People who have never been doubted think a folder like mine must be a wild collection of every slight, every holiday, every sentence that landed wrong. It was not. I had rules. If it did not have a date, a name, a signature, a receipt, a screenshot, or a witness, it did not go in. Pain was not enough. In my family, pain had always been too easy to dismiss. In 2009, my parents' roof started leaking over the back bedroom. Corinne told me she would split the repair because it's not fair for you to handle everything. The estimate was $3,850. I paid the contractor before the next storm came through. By Friday, Corinne said she had never agreed to half, and my mother said I had taken over again. I printed the email where Corinne had written, "I'll cover my part Friday," and placed it behind the therapy summary. In 2012, my father's supplemental insurance card disappeared 3 days before a neurologist appointment. My mother called me at work and asked why I had moved it. I had not moved it. 2 weeks later, Corinne asked me to grab her car keys from her purse, and the card was there, tucked behind a grocery rewards card. I did not take it. I did not make a scene. I wrote down the date, the time, the appointment, and the text Corinne sent later. "Don't turn this into one of your things." In 2016, I found a changed emergency contact form in a packet my mother asked me to organize after a clinic visit. Only Corinne would be called if one of them was hospitalized. The choice no longer surprised me. The signature did. My father's R had that same stiff, copied look from the hospital document 10 years earlier. I made a copy and filed it. During lockdown in 2020, Corinne created a family group chat called Mom and Dad Care Team. Everyone was in it except me. Grace sent me screenshots for 2 months before she finally wrote, "I think you should know what they're saying when you're the one dropping groceries off." Then, in 2022, Arthur Keene, our old neighbor and a retired notary, called me. He sounded embarrassed. Corinne had asked him to confirm a document he did not remember notarizing. "I don't like getting in the middle," he said. No one ever did. But 3 days later, a photocopy arrived in my mailbox, with a note from Arthur. "Something about this feels off." I slid it into the folder and closed the drawer. By then, it was no longer just a record. It was the only room in my life where the facts stayed where I put them. The call that turned the folder from protection into evidence came on a Monday afternoon in April of 2026, while I was standing at my kitchen counter peeling the label off a prescription bottle for my mother. The number on my phone said Midwest Home Servicing. I almost let it go to voicemail because by then half my life seemed to arrive through unfamiliar numbers, but I answered. The man on the line was polite in the way people are polite when a file in front of them has already decided what kind of conversation this will be. He said he was calling about the past due payment on a home equity line of credit tied to Russell and Gloria Mercer's property in Ankeny. The balance, he said, was $41,500. I looked at the pill bottle in my hand. "My parents don't have a home equity line," I said. There was a pause. Paper moved on his end. A keyboard clicked twice. "Ma'am," he said. "This account was opened in September of 2023. After I hung up, I stood very still. On the counter in front of me were my mother's prescription bottle, a grocery receipt, a brown banana, and the reading glasses I kept losing because I never put them in the same place twice. Ordinary things. Safe things. I stared at them for almost a full minute, as if they could hold the room steady. Then I opened my laptop. By midnight, I had pulled county records, bank statements my mother had once emailed me by accident, copies of tax refund notices, and every care-related receipt I had saved since 2023. By 3 in the morning, I had a spreadsheet with 6 tabs and a headache behind my right eye. The home equity line was only the first number. There was $68,000 missing from the long-term care account my parents had set aside after my father's second fall. There was $19,800 in Medicare reimbursements and tax refunds redirected through an online account I had never seen. There was $13,300 from the home modification fund meant to install a stairlift so my father could stop sleeping in the recliner downstairs. Total. 142,600. The recovery email on 2 accounts used Corinne's care consulting address. One transfer had gone to a video studio in West Des Moines. Another payment matched the deposit for a venue where she had filmed a seminar called Honoring Your Parents Without Losing Yourself. I did not cry. What I felt first was not rage. It was a cold, terrible relief. For 20 years, they had told me I saw patterns because something was wrong with me. Now the pattern had routing numbers, timestamps, signatures, and a balance due. For the first time, the thing I had been pointing at could point back. I did not call the police that night. That surprises people when I tell it now, but it made sense to me then. A number is not a case, a suspicion is not a charge. I had spent enough years working around courthouse records to know the difference between being right and being ready. So, I did what I had always done. I built the timeline. For 3 weeks, I came home from work, changed into slippers, made tea I usually forgot to drink, and sat at my kitchen table with bank statements spread beside my laptop. I compared dates against Corinne's public posts, county filings, payment confirmations, and the old notes in my folder. I called Arthur Keene and asked him to look again at his notary log. I asked Grace if she still had screenshots from the care team chat. I emailed Neil Sorensen, a retired estate attorney I knew from my years at the courthouse, and wrote only this: I think my sister may have used my parents' accounts. I need you to tell me what I'm missing. Neil called me 12 minutes later. You're not missing something, he said after I sent the first packet. You're organizing it too politely. By the end of April, I had a binder separate from the old folder. The folder was history. The binder was the present. It had bank records, email headers, a copy of the home equity filing, transfer dates, and a single page at the front titled Mercer Financial Timeline, September 2023 to April 2026. I filed an initial report through the Elder Abuse Hotline, but Neil advised me not to confront Corinne and not to warn my parents. If she gets nervous, he said, she may try to control the story first. He was right. On Monday, May 11th, at 6:28 inches the morning, Grace called me. Not texted, called. Grace was 61 and hated phone calls before breakfast, so I answered before the second ring. Elaine, she whispered. Corinne sent something to the family thread and deleted it. I got it before she did. The screenshot arrived while Grace was still breathing into the phone. It was an email Corinne had forwarded to my mother by mistake. One line sat in the middle of the screen like a match dropped on carpet. If Elaine keeps asking about the accounts, we have to move first. They already believe she's unstable. Use that. I read it once, standing up. I read it again, sitting down. Then I printed it, still warm from the machine, and slid it into the front pocket of the folder. 9 minutes later, someone knocked on my door. You already know who was at the door. What I remember most clearly is not Corinne's face or the badge or my mother's voice coming through the phone. It is the weight of the folder under my arm as Detective Kline walked me to her unmarked car. She did not handcuff me. I think some part of her still knew the difference between a dangerous woman and a tired one. But the younger officer rode behind us, and the woman from Adult Protective Services followed in her own car. Corinne did not come with us. She stayed on my porch long enough for the neighbor across the street to see her wiping her eyes. The ride to the Des Moines police station took 21 minutes. I counted because counting had always given my fear something to do. We passed a gas station, a church marquee advertising a pancake breakfast, and a row of tulips someone had planted along a median. Ordinary things kept happening outside the window, while my life was being carried toward a room with fluorescent lights. Neil Sorensen was waiting when we arrived. He looked older than he had on the phone, thinner through the shoulders, with a gray suit that had been pressed carefully but not recently. He did not ask me if I was all right. That was one of the reasons I trusted him. Instead, he looked at the folder and said, "Do not open it until I tell you." "I know," I said. They are going to think organization is part of the accusation. That landed harder than I expected, because he was right. The interview room was smaller than I thought it would be. One metal table, 3 chairs, a camera in the upper corner, a paper cup of water I never touched. Detective Kline sat across from me with a red file and the expression of someone trying not to let sympathy interfere with procedure. She read the complaint in a level voice. Elder financial exploitation, forged authority documents, misuse of parental accounts, a pattern of obsessive record-keeping and escalating paranoia, according to statements signed by Gloria and Russell Mercer and submitted by Corinne Mercer-Dawson. There it was. My folder, the only thing that had kept the facts alive, had been turned into proof that something was wrong with me. Detective Kline looked up. Mrs. Mercer, your family says you have a long history of fixating on documents. Neil leaned slightly toward me. Slow, he said. I placed the folder on the table but kept my hand on top of it. Detective, I said, if you start with this year, you will think this is about money. It is not just about money. Her eyes moved to the folder. Then, where should I start? I slid it toward her. Tab 4. Detective Kline opened tab 4 first, because I asked her to, but I could see she did not understand why. Not yet. Her thumb paused on the colored divider, then she turned over the first page. It was Hannah Reeves's session summary from 2006. Not the shortened paragraph Corinne had submitted. Not the version my mother had repeated for 20 years. The full page, 3 careful paragraphs printed from an email I had saved on a flash drive, then copied twice after the ink began to fade. Detective Kline read silently. Neil sat beside me with both hands folded over his yellow legal pad. I watched the detective's eyes move down the page until they stopped at the line Hannah had written near the bottom. Elaine presents as factual, oriented, and consistent. Family instability appears to be organized around Corinne's emotional control, while Elaine's objections are being pathologized. Detective Kline read it again. The room changed after that, not loudly. No one gasped. No music swelled. The fluorescent lights still hummed, and the paper cup of water still sat untouched between us. But something in the detective's face loosened by half an inch. She turned to tab 2. There was the 2006 medical power of attorney form, the one from the hospital, with my father's stiff-copied R circled lightly in pencil. Behind it were 3 authentic signatures from old insurance forms, each one showing the long hook my father always made. Then came the 2016 emergency contact form with the same wrong R, like the forger had learned the mistake and kept repeating it. Detective Kline did not comment. She only wrote something down. Tab 5 held Arthur Keene's statement. He had signed it in blue ink, old-fashioned and careful. He stated that the notarization bearing his name on the 2023 home equity document did not match his logbook and had not been performed by him. Behind his statement was a photograph of the open notary journal. The line for that date was blank. Then she opened tab 1. That was where the money lived. The $41,500 home equity line, the $68,000 long-term care withdrawal, the $19,800 in redirected reimbursements and refunds, the $13,300 stairlift fund that had gone, instead, to a video production studio in West Des Moines. Beside, each transfer was a date, a source account, a destination, and the recovery email connected to Corinne's care consulting business. Finally, I reached into the folder's front pocket and handed over the screenshot Grace had sent that morning. Use that. Detective Kline stared at those 2 words longer than she had stared at any number. Then she set her pen down. It was the smallest sound in the room. It was also the first honest one. Detective Kline picked up the screenshot again, then looked through the glass panel in the door toward the hallway. She did not say she believed me. People in her job are trained not to give away that much. But she closed the red file Corinne had brought and kept my folder open. That told me enough. She stood and said, I need to ask your sister a few follow-up questions. Neil rose with her. My client stays here. She stays here, Detective Kline said. The door opened, then closed, and for the first time, that morning, I was alone in a police interview room, with nothing to do but listen to the building breathe. Somewhere outside, a phone rang twice. A chair scraped against tile. The camera in the corner kept its little red eye on me. I looked at the folder on the table, at the bent edges, the colored tabs, the rubber bands Neil had set beside it, like two tired circles. Through the wall, I heard Corinne's voice, soft at first, confused, almost hurt. I don't understand. Elaine has always handled paperwork. That's why we were concerned. Detective Kline's voice was lower, steadier. Can you explain why the recovery email on 2 accounts belongs to your care consulting business? A pause. I used that email for a lot of family things. And the payment to the video studio? Another pause. Longer. That was reimbursement. For a stair lift your father never received? The silence after that was different. It had weight. Detective Kline continued. Arthur Keene states he did not notarize the home equity document. His journal is blank for that date. Can you tell me who prepared that form? Corinne's voice sharpened around the edges. I don't know what Elaine has told you, but she has been obsessed with me for years. There it was again. The old door. The familiar room. The same word dressed in newer clothes. Then Detective Kline said, "This is not about what Elaine told me. This is about what the documents show." I closed my eyes. Not because I was tired, though I was. Not because I was relieved, though some part of me had begun to loosen. I closed my eyes because for 20 years, I had waited to hear one person say that sentence. Through the wall, Corinne said nothing. Then, quieter, smaller, stripped of all the softness she used in public, she said, "I want an attorney." Neil came back into the room first. Detective Kline followed. She looked at me, not kindly exactly, but clearly. "Mrs. Mercer," she said, "we are not moving forward with charges against you today. We will be opening a separate investigation into your sister." My mother was still on the speakerphone. I had forgotten she was there until I heard her breathing. I leaned toward the phone and said, "Mom, you can hang up now." She did not. But she finally had nothing to say. I walked out of the station that afternoon, carrying nothing but my purse and a receipt for the copied pages of my own life. Neil kept the folder for evidence. He said the originals needed to be logged properly now, and for once, I did not argue with a man taking my papers away. They had done their job. They had spoken in the room where my voice would have been dismissed. The investigation did not explode all at once. Real consequences rarely do. They arrive in envelopes, phone calls, frozen accounts, scheduled interviews, and the sudden quiet of people who used to speak with certainty. Adult Protective Services opened its own review. The bank flagged the home equity line. Arthur Keene gave a formal statement. Grace sent every screenshot she had kept, including messages I had never seen. Corinne's online world began to crack before the legal one did. Her page, Gentle Aging with Corinne, went silent for 3 days. Then comments started disappearing. Then the seminar clips vanished. Then the video about honoring your parents without losing yourself was replaced by a gray box that said content unavailable. I did not watch it happen in real time. Grace told me enough. My parents moved in with a temporary care coordinator while the accounts were reviewed. My mother called once. I did not answer. My father did not call at all, which was the most familiar thing he could have done. 3 weeks later, Gloria sent a text at 6:14 on a Thursday evening. I think I let her do it. A second message came 1 minute later. I don't know how to ask you to forgive that. I read both messages standing at my kitchen counter, the same counter where I had first heard the number $142,600. Rain tapped against the window over the sink. The house smelled like peppermint tea and toast. I waited for the old instinct to rise the need to explain, to comfort, to make my mother feel less terrible about the terrible thing she had admitted. It did not come. I placed the phone face down and made my tea. That Saturday, Grace drove down from Ames. We ate tomato soup and grilled cheese at my table, like two women who had survived a storm and did not yet know what to call the weather after it. She told me she had kept her own little folder since 2020. I laughed then, softly, not because it was funny, but because I was not alone anymore. That night, I opened the filing cabinet. The drawer looked strangely empty without the blue folder. I touched the metal rail where it had rested for years. My name is Elaine Mercer. For 20 years, they called me unstable, because I remembered what they wanted forgotten. This time, the folder remembered with me. And for the first time, I did not need to hold it. The lesson Elaine's story leaves behind is not only about a folder, or money, or a sister who lied. It is about the quiet danger of letting someone else define your reality for too long. Some families do not break you with one loud betrayal. They do it slowly. A word here, a look there, a story repeated at every holiday, until people stop asking whether it is true. Sensitive, difficult, dramatic, unstable. After enough years, those words can become a cage, especially when they come from the people who were supposed to protect you. But the truth has a memory, even when people do not. Sometimes resilience does not look like shouting back. Sometimes it looks like saving one document, keeping one receipt, remembering one sentence, choosing not to lose yourself even when everyone around you keeps rewarding the person who hurt you. Elaine did not win because she was louder than Corinne. She won because she stayed steady. She did not let bitterness make her careless. She did not let pain make her cruel. She kept the facts, and when the moment came, she allowed the truth to stand where her voice had been dismissed for 20 years. That is a powerful reminder for anyone who has ever been misunderstood inside their own family. Love should never require you to erase what happened. Forgiveness should never demand that you hand your memory back to the people who rewrote it. And family is not proven by blood alone. Family is proven by who tells the truth when lying would be easier. Maybe the hardest part of healing is realizing that you may never get the apology you deserved. But peace does not always come from hearing someone say, "I was wrong." Sometimes peace comes from finally knowing you were not. So if this story touched something in you, leave a comment below. Have you ever been called difficult for noticing the truth? Have you ever had to keep proof because your word was not enough? Share your thoughts. Someone reading may need to know they are not alone. And if you want more stories about family betrayal, truth, resilience, and the strength it takes to rebuild your life, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for the next story.